Hey folks, my name is Theodore Abbott. I'm the news editor at the Capilano Courier, and here's your February news update. Okay, so the first article I'm discussing is called The Collateral Damage of Cutting Courses, authored by Ben Taylor, who's one of our staff writers. This article is all about how CapU has recently had to cut certain programs and courses, and the collateral damage of that, the result of that, is that certain students and certain programs are having to take courses, required courses, elsewhere, more specifically at Thompson Rivers University, TRU. And this article takes a kind of a deep dive into the world of the accounting program and the CPA, the Chartered Professional Accountant focus here at CapU, and how this certain cohort of students have recently had to start taking required courses at Thompson Rivers. And yeah, it just looks at the plight of these students and how their situation isn't particularly unique right now in the climate of budget cuts and course cutting here at CapU. In this article, we talked to both faculty and students who are dealing with this issue. We heard back from them about how poor communication on the part of the university has exacerbated the issue and made things worse, kind of compounding the fact that these students are having to go elsewhere to complete their course. So if you want to learn more about that, you can find it in our print edition, available around campus, or you can find it online, as with all of our articles. Okay, article number 2, Deficit Mitigation Proposals Meet Outdated Policies. This article is authored by Laura Morales, our co-editor-in-chief. So for a little bit of context with this article, at CapU, we have the Board of Governors and we also have the Senate. These two bodies are part of the university's hierarchy, and it's part of the university's sort of democratic process, democratic structure. When you're doing things like cutting courses, the University Act requires that you seek, that the administration seeks the advice of Senate. But there are some certain gray areas within that again have caused a bit of awkwardness in the current climate as CapU continues to try to pause courses or cut back courses. And it all comes down to language that is sometimes kind of vague. So this article is just one piece in a broader puzzle that is painting a picture of this unprecedented situation that CapU finds itself in terms of funding and a budget deficit. I see this article as emblematic of kind of a sobering reality of BC and Canadian post-secondary institutions right now, which is that certain courses and certain programs are seen as performing and underperforming. If a course or a program is underperforming, it's more likely to get cut, which I think sort of fundamentally undermines what universities are supposed to be for and be about. You know, there should be courses that are sort of superfluous and purely academic, and they don't really have much of maybe they have a lower enrollment rate, but they shouldn't get cut all because, you know, less students might enroll in it one year or another. But this is not the situation that we're in right now. Courses have to perform well or else they get the cut. So check this article out, again, in our February issue, available online and in print. Okay, article number 3, CapU introduces new protest guidelines, and this is authored by Jolie Wen. The long and short of this article is that a little while ago, we're not entirely sure, it's sort of vague, is the university introduced new protest guidelines that are pretty rigid, and they did this sort of quietly. They did so without consulting students or faculty. What it does is it allows the university to further restrict protest zones. It allows the university to establish where protests can happen. They also allow the university to further regulate amplified sound and access into and around buildings. The new protest guidelines also give campus security expanded authority and gives them sort of more freedom to involve police with matters of protests on campus. It also gives them increased authority when issuing notice of trespassing, when involving the police, if there was like a rowdy protest or something like that. It also really frames the university as a private space and as private property, when of course universities are publicly funded. And that's one of the pieces that this article really dives into, is this sort of apparent kind of conundrum and paradox. So students and faculty are warning that these new rules could suppress democratic expression. They're criticizing the language as being vague and restrictive, and also resembling the language used by certain authoritarian systems rather than a democratic university. Okay, fourth article. CapU announces the closure of the Sunshine Coast Kalahai campus and the not closure of CapU Lonsdale. And this article was written by Ren Zhang. So due to CapU's ongoing financial crisis, they've announced the closure of the Sunshine Coast Kalahai campus. And they've also announced that they're transferring all programming and all courses from CapU Lonsdale to the main campus. And this is going to be taking place in spring 2026. So this announcement kind of comes on the heels of ongoing financial woes that CapU is experiencing, a reduction in the amount of visas granted to international students, and massive budget deficits. So what they're doing is they're pulling back and they're trying to save money where they can. One of the issues here is CapU is required to service what they call the sea to sky corridor. CapU Lonsdale, on the other hand, was a space acquired by the university not that long ago, and they're sort of parsing it down. They're not getting rid of the asset yet. They're not letting it go, but it's not clear whether there'll be any more programming there for the foreseeable future. And for all intents and purposes, it does look like they're closing it down. These campus closures and this financial situation kind of highlight broader issues within the BC post-secondary institution system right now, where 19 out of 25 institutions are facing annual deficits, just like CapU. So if you want to learn more about this article, check it out online or in our print issue, which you can find around campus, but not on the other campuses. Okay, next up, an update from the world of the Capilano Students' Union, which is your student union, the CSU. So recently, the CSU voted to restore the pay of VP External Vanch Kalra. The motion passed at the Board of Directors meeting on January 30th. So basically, Vanch was AWOL, missed a bunch of meetings last year, wasn't really around, wasn't submitting reports, and as a result, he got his pay docked. The justification that the VP External gave for this was that he missed these meetings and didn't submit regrets, but that was because he was moving. He was moving from the island to the mainland, and so he said, I should be forgiven because these are exceptional circumstances. It should be noted that sending regrets basically just means that it's just a technical term, meaning that you didn't even send an email or like a text message saying like, hey, I'm not going to make it to this meeting. So it's kind of a very low bar for letting people know that you're not going to make it. A board member raised their hand and asked whether Vanch had submitted their ABCS Lobby Days report, which is like a report that you have to do after you attend Lobby Days, which is hosted by the Alliance of BC Students. And apparently that report had not been submitted. And so they were reinstating this individual's pay, even though it seemed as though there was like outstanding indications of still having not done his work. But regardless, the motion passed. One of the students who was at the meeting emphasized that bylaws and policies should be followed consistently, especially when they're regarding pay and executive pay. In response, the executive director, Chris Girardat, outlined that staff do monitor attendance, apply pay reductions once the policy threshold is met, and that such reductions continue unless reversed by board motion, noting that approval of the motion would result in a reduction of someone's pay. So basically what the executive director was highlighting here is that in order for staff to say someone's not getting paid, they have to wait for the board to vote on that because it's a democratic process, right? And the CSU staff just follow the direction of the board. The board calls the shots. And if the board isn't doing anything, then nothing's going to happen. Okay, so last time that I did a news update, I talked to you folks about how the CSU was sort of considering bringing in timesheets as a practice for executive and board pay. And this is a standard practice among many, many different student unions across Canada. And the CSU does not currently use timesheets. And they voted to continue to not use timesheets. What the timesheets would basically do is implement more checks and balances, a little bit more oversight around and accountability around pay, which of course the board pay and the executive pay is coming out of the students' pockets. So who knows, this might come up again in a future board meeting and they might vote to approve it, or they might continue to choose to not use timesheets. Anyways, that's your CSU update for now. As always, we'll keep you folks in the loop as things continue to happen at the Capilano Students' Union.